Hi everyone! So a few months ago I'm just sitting at the movie theater watching the trailers, and then I hear this sentence uttered.
Is something wrong with Colton?
For those of you that don't know, that is my first name, and you can imagine my surprise hearing it in this movie, as my name is not very common to say the least. I was even more surprised when Colton was rushed to the hospital because of a ruptured appendix, as mine nearly ruptured a few years ago. But the biggest surprise of all was when Colton went to heaven during the operation. Before you accuse that plot point of Heaven is for Real being unoriginal, this was all based on a true story. There's not much else I can say after that, so welcome to Short and to the Point, where I review movies in 5 minutes or less, or your money back. Heaven is for Real has a somewhat odd beginning. We inexplicably start off in Lithuania for a few minutes before switching to Nebraska for the rest of the story. There is a small payoff to the Lithuania moment, but I have a few issues with it that I can't delve into due to spoilers. After that, we are then introduced to the Burpo family, comprised of Todd, Sanja, Cassie, and finally Colton. After about 20-something minutes of the family just going about their daily lives, Colton develops a high fever. Like I said earlier, Colton's appendix has ruptured, resulting in many people in the town praying for him, as his father is known for working several jobs, along with being a pastor. Now at first I thought that the operation was anticlimactic, because we don't see much of the operation, and when it's over, we find out that absolutely nothing went wrong with the operation, meaning that Colton couldn't have gone to heaven, and the family goes home happy. But here's the thing. Colton actually did go to heaven, but it's not because he had a near-death experience that nobody knew about. His soul just left his body, or at least that's what he tells his parents. Colton's description of heaven is very specific, and given how he is 4 years old, it's unlikely that he could have made it all up. However, his father doesn't immediately believe him, but he also doesn't think that Colton is lying either. He just needs to be sure, and as such conducts research to ensure that there is nothing during the operation that could have caused Colton to hallucinate his journey. He discovers no such evidence, and afterwards he starts to come under scrutiny from the church. The question is, why? Well, on one hand they are nervous about what the media attention could do to the church's reputation. On the other hand, none of them claim to believe Colton either, and these are people that are supposed to believe without seeing any physical evidence. For Pete's sake, believing and seeing is written in the Bible, which technically counts as physical evidence, but you know what I mean. The point is, why is nobody jumping for joy to find out for sure that heaven is for real? Well, Todd describes heaven as being hope. Hope that one day we will be reunited with our lost loved ones. But the thing about hope is that nobody wants to have it ripped away from them. As wonderful as it is, it's still possible that Colton's beautiful description of heaven really was just a hallucination. Whatever the case may be, you can tell that Todd desperately wants to believe his son. Unfortunately, Colton's appendicitis couldn't have happened at a worse time, as the family has been experiencing financial problems that have gotten worse since the surgery. Todd's wife wants him to stop trying to go along with Colton's story, because if he gets fired by the church, they will lose their home, which is provided for them by the church. This gives the audience a more relatable reason to care about the Burpos, as this film isn't entirely about whether or not you believe in heaven. That's Greg Kinnear as Todd, and his performance is pretty low-key, but that works to his advantage as it makes his dramatic scenes stronger. For example, there is one scene between him and a woman known as Nancy, played by Margot Mattindale. She asks him a question about God, and he counters with a simple but thought-provoking question of his own, making for one of the more emotional parts of the film. In fact, low-key is how I would describe most of the movie. It's a serene picture at its core, and that makes sense given the subject matter, which makes it easier to absorb certain scenes. This also applies to the more picturesque visuals, which also go with the film's tone. That being said, I did have some issues with this movie, such as Colton. There is nothing wrong with the performance, it's just the way he's written sometimes. My problem is that when Colton goes to heaven, he seems very unfazed by the fact that, as far as he knows, he's dead, and remember, he's 4. The movie tries to explain this by saying that Colton is smart for his age, but the movie never really backs that claim up, and even if that was the case, it doesn't justify how Colton isn't the least bit weirded out that he is no longer in the hospital, and it's never really established that heaven is what is keeping Colton calm. There are also some scenes that are going for drama but don't generate the desired effect due to their execution, but these moments don't detract much from the overall film. And one final note is that I wasn't really a big fan of when the movie showed heaven. The heaven sequences are okay, but I felt like it was kind of counterintuitive to show heaven given how the entire movie was about faith. Still, I think Heaven is for Real is an alright film. While the story loses some of its ambiguity towards the end, the story was still thought-provoking enough and enforces why we should believe in heaven rather than beat us over the head that we must believe in heaven. I give it 7.5 miracles out of a possible 10, and I do recommend it for a theatrical viewing if you believe in heaven. But even if you don't believe in heaven, I still think you might enjoy this movie in theaters. I mean, after all, how could you not believe a guy named Colton? This has been short and to the point, and I review movies in 5 minutes or less, or your money back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go and prepare a few scripts for the most wonderful time of the film season, the summer blockbuster season. Bye.
I can only imagine surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? To my knees or will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak